Hello, poetry lovers, wherever you are. Today's selection of poems should prove interesting. They are all taken from this huge book, which I can hardly hold with one hand, but which has the telltale cartoon of the New Yorker on the cover. Can you see him there, looking at the butterfly? Ah, yes. The famous New Yorker. And this, my friends, is a book that's no longer in print. As far as I know, it's called The New Yorker Book of Poems, selected by the editors of The New Yorker. The poems in this book are taken from the New Yorker magazine and were published between 1925 and 1969. This book itself came on the market in 1970, and I have no idea where I bought it, but I think since I was a subscriber to the New Yorker at that time, I may have ordered it through them. You know, you could order heavy books and they would come, and the shipping charges at the time were pretty minimal. But those days are kind of gone forever, aren't they? Anyway, I've treasured this book for many years, as you can see. And the poems include many poets who were famous at the time or went on to become well-known. And they're mostly people who held academic jobs, although some supported themselves by their poetry, like W.H. Auden. He never went to universities if he could help it, unless they paid him big bucks to lecture. And it was in that guise that I saw him lecture at Stanford University back in the 1950s. But that has nothing to do with today's poetry. So this book contains poems with a high standard of quality. And so how do I organize a reading? Well, the book is not arranged according to the author, according to the era or the year in which it was published. No, the poems appear in this book in alphabetical order, A through Y. There's no poems beginning with Z, so they didn't, the letter Z is not in here. But I'm going to go along with the editors of the book, and I'm going to choose my poems by alphabet. Crazy? Well, but hey, why not? I'm thinking this book is such a treasure chest of poems. I can read from any page in the book, and it will be fine. I can also insert readings from this book if we're a little light on other poems that I might come across and want to read in the meantime. But generally, I'm trying to wend my way through an unending treasure trove of poetry, which presents itself to the world. And we've read some recent poems and by recent poets lately. You'll remember the book Puzzled, which was by my friend Ruth Moss, and which is currently for sale. Anyway, I'm starting today with a funky little poem that I thought was both original and funny. It's by a poet named Adrian Mitchell, a man, not Adrian Mitchell, but Adrian Mitchell. And the title of the poem is The Accountant. In his bath. I think you'll enjoy this poem. The accountant dried his imperfect back as he stood in the sinking water. In 10 years' time, I'll be dead as cork, no sooner, no later. Numbers display more muscle every day. They multiply while I'm asleep. When I fall to pieces, they won't even see. They'll keep on adding each other up. I know the numbers. Each has a color. 23 is olive green. 5's a comedian. All have characters. 1 is God, and 8's the queen. But I was never envious of numbers, watching them replace each other. Like the grim wolves, not one remembers his fading father. You may have heard in the distance Alexa speaking to me. And I've got so many electronics around here. Trying to run around and turn them all off is just more than I can handle. Well, let's continue with this poem. Passionless, lean, their armies march, invade more ledgers, take more men alive, but they're not free to run or lurch, each to his private grave. Patches of water shrank inside the bath. Confident in the immortal numbers, he heard his wife's amazing laugh. I love her, he said, as he pulled on his pajamas. Now let's think about that poem. I think Adrian Mitchell was an Englishman. So when he was talking about the Queen, he was not talking about the Queen of Hearts or the Queen of Spades. He was talking about the Queen of England. And of course, the English hardly ever take a shower. They are bathtub fanatics. And so when we hear the accountant say that he dried his imperfect back and stood in the sinking water, in 10 years' time I'll be dead as cork. No sooner, no later. So he's having ruminations about numbers, and he's entertaining us. And he sees the numbers as passionless and lean, and their armies march, invade more ledgers, take more men alive, but they're not free to run or lurch, each to his private grave. No, if you're an accountant, the numbers are in control. And he's expecting not to live very much longer, as he told us in the first stanza. So he hears his wife's amazing laugh, and he says, I love her, he said, as he pulled on his pajamas. That is an absolutely wonderful little pastiche of thoughts and ideas. Okay, so now I've picked another poem that this time is by quite a famous poet, Robert Graves, and it's called Advice to Colonel Valentine by Robert Graves. To fall in love, though classically human, is comic if a girl or an old man, pathetic if a boy or an old woman. Love remains decent for how long? The nation allows each female 30 years, tax on 10 more for males intent on procreation. Your decent years, you say, have lapsed. The comic come crowding, yet love gnaws you to the quick, as once when you were 15 and pathetic. Dye your hair, do you ask? Dress natty, swing an aggressive cane, whistle and lie. That would indeed be to act comically. Friend, honor your gray hairs. Keep out of fashion, even if a foolish girl, not yet full grown, confronts you with a scarcely decent passion. Robert Graves is giving advice to an older middle-aged Colonel Valentine. And don't you suppose that the name Valentine has some not so well hidden message for this poem? Yeah. He's advising the man about love, and when it becomes comic, when it becomes pathetic, and when it's okay. And he ends up by saying, friend, honor your gray hairs. Keep out of fashion, even if a foolish girl not yet full grown confronts you with a scarcely decent passion. Colonel Valentine may have come to this story a little too late, but there you are. A nice and humorous and wry poem by Robert Graves. Now here's another poem. It's called Aegean, Aegean, referring to the Aegean Sea. And it's by the poet Lewis Simpson. Where only flowers fret and some small passionate birds sing, the trumpets sounded yesterday. The famous ships are gone. Troy fades, and the face that shone, fair Helen and her tower, could not stay. Where are the temples set their gods would not forget? The trophies and the altars, echo, say. There's no one any more but Echo on the shore, and Echo only laughs and runs away. Though still the olive glows like silver, and the rose is glittering and fresh as in their day, no witnesses remain of battles on the plain, and the bright oar and the oar spray. Well, there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of sadness and whimsy in there. It's as if Lewis Simpson had traveled to the Aegean, knowing its history, and maybe expecting to see a trireme rowed by several levels of slaves running across the ocean, but no, those things don't exist anymore, only in the legends and in the writings of their contemporaries. So he's saying that no witnesses remain of battles on the plain, and the bright oar and the oar spray. The rhyming schemes in this poem are very clever. The stanzas consist of 6 lines, and the first couplet of each line rhymes. Where are the temples set their gods would not forget? The trophies and the altars echo, say. There's no one any more but Echo on the shore, and echo only laughs and runs away. You can see that say in the third line and away in the sixth line rhyme. So it's a complex rhyme scheme, but it works beautifully. I mean, you don't think about it very much when you're reading the poem. It's not sing-songy. It doesn't do that to you, but it is a very well-wrought poem. Now, the last poem we're going to read today is called Against Seasons by Robert Mezey. Robert Mezey, I'll tell you a little bit more about him, but he was a classmate of mine at the University of Iowa while I was there. It's called, this poem is called Against Seasons. Why should we praise them or revere the stations of the zodiac when every unforgiving year drives us hence and calls us back? The expectations we invent drift bodiless on the drifting air, and who conceives them but must rent the dark apartment of despair? Days come and go, and we suppose the future will bring something big, but season after season throws rhomboids of sunlight on the rug. They say a heavenly horn will blow. They say we must not be afraid, but they are fools for saying so. Endless meridians swing and fade. All bodies in their orbits go. The sky has nothing left to give. We in this clash of circles know only the vicious ones we live. It's kind of a sad, kind of a hopeless poem. The Robert Mezey I remember was a hopeful guy, not a hopeless guy. He got his BA at Iowa, and he went to Stanford for an MA. I had previously been at Stanford, and when we met at the University of Iowa, he was thinking of going to Stanford, so maybe I influenced him to do so. I don't know. He published 7 or 8 books. He did translations mostly from Spanish and taught at several universities. He died 2 years ago at the age of 85 years. And he was a frequent poet in many journals of poetry, and certainly published more than once in the New Yorker. And we have no way of knowing at what age of his life or at what year the poem that he wrote called Against Seasons was written. It sounds like it might have been a poem from somewhat late in his life, but I'm only guessing at that. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this almost random selection of poems from the New Yorker. They were all good, and I didn't have to pick them out. The editors did. It was fun for me too. And I must say, if any of you have poems that you would like to be published in a place where their value is recognized, the New Yorker might be a good place to submit because they pay, I've heard, very well. Okay, that's it. And remember, you might be able to find this book if you want to at the library, but as far as I know, it's not on the market anymore. Bye now, and I hope you'll be back to see me, or at least listen to me, again in a week. Bye now.